Season 2 Episode 4 of The Mandalorian certainly presented something that wasn't expected. After Episode 3, we were expecting the long-awaited live-action appearance of Ahsoka Tano, but instead, we got multiple shocking revelations that resonated throughout the entire Star Wars saga. The biggest one being the reason why the Empire is after the child, which also brought with it intriguing possibilities that could finally explain one of the biggest plot holes in modern Star Wars history, Snoke. So let's dig deeper into how The Mandalorian can introduce the origins of this mysterious and flawed Star Wars villain. When we saw the test tubes at the Imperial base in Navarro, our minds quickly went to Snoke. But despite the unexpectedness of this connection, this is something that was probably in the works for a while, because in September of last year, in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Jon Favreau alluded to the fact that we were going to see the origins of the First Order. When he mentioned this, fans thought that they were only going to see the aesthetic transition and armament of the Empire into the First Order. After all, how is it possible for an issue as big as the foundation of the entire sequel trilogy going to be addressed in a television show? Boy, how things have changed, and how wrong we were. We now have a plot that not only could explain one of the biggest gaps in the entire lore of the franchise, but can also dictate the future of the saga. All of this just by bringing back an important aspect of the Star Wars mythology that Disney Star Wars wanted to erase from lore: the Metachlorians. What implications are there for the subtle reintroduction of the Metachlorians in The Mandalorian? Let's find out. The Empire was experimenting with various subjects by injecting them with blood that had the highest Metachlorian count they could find: the child's blood. Their purpose is quite obvious. They wanted to create a being that was powerful with the Force, similar to Snoke, who was artificially created, a husk like the Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker, who was nothing more than an imperfect clone. We couldn't help but feel that there's a connection. But how? Their main goal is to create an adequate vessel that could contain Palpatine's essence and be able to use his powers without breaking apart. The way to do this was to create a clone with the highest Metachlorian count possible. It is commonly believed that those husks were clones, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because even though the scientists have the symbol of Camino, there's nothing that proves that those are clones. Dr. Pershing suggests that the experiments had to be suspended to prevent the current volunteer from suffering the same fate as the previous ones. When he said the word volunteer, this means that some person is willingly going through these experiments, and that person could be Snoke. He may not have been adequate to be Palpatine's vessel, but at least was good enough to be cloned. Those could be the bodies that we saw in Rise of Skywalker. The idea that all of them are clones seems logical, but you may be asking yourselves, who were they cloned after? And the answer to that is Palpatine. That volunteer could have been one of Palpatine's clones, who offered himself to be the next in line for the new round of experiments. This may imply that the subjects we saw in Episode 9 were Palpatine's clones who were not Force sensitive, because cloning someone strong with the Force doesn't mean that it will result in a clone that was also strong with the Force. This may explain why there were so many of them. They were the results of a big process of trial and error. Perhaps the final stage of this project is for Palpatine to enter a clone that was infused with the child's blood to stabilize it and make sure it survives. This means that both Palpatine and Snoke may have Baby Yoda's blood inside of them, and that they are alive only because of our little green friend. There is yet another possibility, and that is that an army of Force-infused soldiers is being created. They may be clones, but this time they will be Force sensitive. So imagine their potential. A way for the Empire to restore its power and might without spending many resources. We already saw that Moff Gideon is creating an army of droid super soldiers, so he is looking for a way to make troopers that are vastly superior to the classic stormtroopers. He might be trying to achieve this differently though. Maybe one of the results of this altered super soldier creation process was Snoke, who then became the basis for the rest of the clones from that point on. What's incredible about all of this is that in a 30+ minute episode, They gave us more information and explanations than any of the movies from the sequel trilogy, which kinda proves that the ones behind such movies were lacking imagination, integrity, and overall skills to move the story forward. Understandably, many of you may feel a little bummed about the series having parallels with the Disney sequels, but try to look at it from a different perspective. See how The Mandalorian puts the sequel trilogy and its creators to shame. And also be aware that while we have many theories, nothing is set in stone. So all the cool things that we may be seeing lately may be an attempt to make amends for what happened in the Disney sequel trilogy. Us here talking about Snoke is proof of that, which was an unfathomable thing for many of you before watching this video. We at least have something to hold on to, as Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian angle have a lot of potential for future surprises. But what about you? Do you think that we're going to see the origins of Snoke and the First Order in The Mandalorian? And please don't forget, subscribe to our new channel, Mandalorian Universe.